bringing your gift. And if anyone else has gifts that they want to bring musically, just let us know. Let us know. We are welcoming and open. And thank you very much for that. That was beautiful. Who is opening the door? I grew up in Miami and remember when I was a child looking out the cracks in the boarded up windows at Hurricane Donna blowing, and the streets were flooded, and it was a kid's paradise because the whole world had turned into a swimming pool, and we didn't know about the toxins and the parasites and all of that ended up being in that. But we played in the weather, and hurricanes were not unfamiliar to me as a child. And then I came up here and thought that we had gotten away from hurricanes until I think it was 10 years ago in 2004 when Hurricane Ivan came through. And we had 6 feet of water in the parking lot. I wasn't so joyous about that one as I was when I was a kid. And it went down, and there was all the mud, and we had it all cleaned out and graded, and at that time we didn't have asphalt, we had it re-rocked, and it was 10 days later that Hurricane Francis came through, and we had another 6 feet of water in the parking lot. And so I have a lot of respect for the power of hurricanes. And John and I were down in Florida for a couple of weeks ago, and Sunday morning we got up, we got dressed, and we went to the Center for Spiritual Living in Fort Lauderdale. And during that time, I heard Dr. Arlene tell a story about 9 years ago when Hurricane Wilma came through South Florida. Hey, Wilma, you are a hurricane. And she was sharing that the hurricane had taken the roof off of not the sanctuary, but pretty much the rest of the building, and picked it up and moved it over into the back of the parking lot. And then that area was wide open for all of the rain to come in and the flooding that happened. They actually met, I think, for 3 Sundays after that with no electricity. They had plenty of power. Let me get clear. They just didn't have any electricity. So they opened up the windows and everybody gathered, and Arlene spoke loudly, and they gathered because nobody in that part of South Florida had any electricity at that time. I found it fascinating that the electric companies have managed to grab the word power. I have your power. No, you don't. You have my electricity. That's all you have, and I can live without electricity because I have my own power. So Dr. Arlene was talking about after the storm had blown through, and she was getting ready to go to the center. And this is a center I know very well because I took almost all of my Science of Mind classes there. I worked there when I was in ministerial school, and I know every inch of that place. So she said that she was getting ready to go back and take a look, and that her people called her and said, before you come, you need to get ready. You need to prepare yourself for what you're going to walk into, because it's a mess. It doesn't have a roof. And a hurricane came. Everything is lost. Everything that has anything to do with records or computers or anything like that is just gone. And so she said, well, that's all right. You know, I'm a religious science minister. I understand who I am. I'm coming over. And she said she got to the front door and put her hand out and froze. Because she asked herself a very important question. Who is opening the door? Who inside of me will open this door? Because what I know is that whoever opens the door finds themselves on the other side of the door. So she stood there for 15 minutes with her hand out. She'd get clear. I know that all is well. She wasn't trying to make the damage go away. She wasn't trying to go back in time and pretend like it hadn't been a hurricane and reconstruct all of the molecules to make it exactly the way that it was so that there won't have been any change. Because change happens. What she was doing was seeing inside of herself who was going to open that door. Because she knew that whoever opened the door found themselves on the other side. And so she would ask herself, am I in my fear or am I in my faith? Not faith that everything had gone back to the way it was and there was nothing to deal with, but faith that even though she didn't have a clue how they were going to handle it, that they could handle it. And she kept getting, you're afraid. And as long as she got you're afraid, she would not open the door. Now there are people on the inside, there's activities going on, and she's standing in the front with her hand reached out, not touching the door until she's clear about who she is. And I thought, what an amazing experience. First of all, she's the leader. She's supposed to be all gotten it together and cruising on down after the storm and just opening up the doors wide and saying, we have got it going on. We know how to handle this. We'll use treatment and consciousness. We'll lift it up and we'll make it through as a community. Something wonderful is about to happen. But she didn't. She was honest with herself and said, at this moment, I'm afraid. All the traffic lights are out. Trees have been blown down. In the parking lot was the roof of her center. And she stood there and kept asking herself, who is going to open this door? Is it the part of me that is afraid, that doesn't know what to do here? Or is it the part of me that knows that no matter what the circumstance is, God is still all that there is. There is still a power within each one of us that we can use to lift ourselves out of whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. And when she got really clear, it's like standing in front of the fire. Can I walk on this fire? Am I safe? You wait until you get the yes. And when she got the yes, she opened the door. And it wasn't that she wasn't shocked and just overwhelmed with it all. I think, Jackie, you were there during that time. But it was that she knew that they would be okay. She knew that they would pick up the pieces and clean it up and put a new roof. I think they had plastic over that roof for months. And eventually it all got rebuilt and put together. And so I ask myself, when I find myself in situations in life, who is opening the door? We find ourselves in a situation like that as a community. With Christy stepping into the great unknown. You have that yourself. Who is opening the door? And we look at it and we have to say, who is opening up the door of our lives? Because the only thing constant is change. Change will happen. You can't not change. Everybody, take a breath. Hold it. Don't change. Don't let it go. We're going to stay the same. We'll die. We'll all die if we try to stay the same. And so the art of it all is, how do we move through the circumstances in our lives? How do we find that place within us that knows that no matter what's going on, we're going to be okay, because frankly, we command all of the power of the creative essence of life itself in us. What we focus on, we create. And so are we going to stand at the door of change and go, I'm going to create a lot of drama here because I am not master of my state, and so I'm not going to be master of my fate. I'm going to drop down into the dregs of race consciousness and be afraid and call, criticize and blame and do all of these things that I've learned from my past, and I'm going to open up that door, and then I'm going to say, oh, there's drama in this change. Do you know that there's criticism and blame and upset? That's because we put it there. That's because we brought it with us and put it there, and then we come in, and the only one we ever find in our lives is ourselves. My son is a Star Wars nut. And he has raised his children to be Star Wars nuts too. When he was 3 years old, we lived in a little town in Florida called Wauchula, population 4,000. And in order to watch the new Star Wars movie that we had heard so much about, we had to drive all the way to Lakeland. It was like an hour away to find the first movie theater. And we went there, and he's 3 years old, and watched that movie and had it memorized. He's 3 years old. He only watched it once, and he's reciting scenes from this movie. If it had been like an old classic, I would have said it was a past life thing, but it wasn't. It was a new movie. And one of the scenes that I remember so well is, if you remember Star Wars, there's Luke, who's the hero, dressed in white. They made it really easy for us. The good guys are in white, the bad guys are in black, and we could differentiate who the people are, even though they had these costumes and robes on and things. But then there's the wise Yoda. And Yoda is if you ever really go over the words that Yoda spoke in the Star Wars movies, they're all completely metaphysical. And there is something called a dark cave that Luke, in his discovery of himself, has to go into. And he says to Yoda, he says, I think that you know why I have to go in there. And Yoda said, to find something in yourself. You know how Yoda talks, methinks. That you have to go in there to find something in you. You have to go find it. And Luke said, well, what am I going to find in there? And Yoda said, only what you bring. Only what you bring you will find in there. So who's opening up the door? What part of us are we bringing into the experiences of our life that then we will find? People say, oh, the center is so great, and you're right, it is. And people say, oh, Barbara, you're amazing. You've saved my life. And I am amazing, but I didn't save your life. You did. You did because you chose to come here, and then you found yourself here in a teaching that says there is a power and a presence within you that cannot be denied. There is greatness inside of you. And if you try to hold it back, it's only going to drive you crazy, that you have to let it out. You have to let it out. And if you let that greatness out, it will lift you up and carry you anywhere you want to go, because it already has everything that you need to get there. There's an idea that this is a divine idea in the mind of God whose time has come. You are a divine idea in the mind of God whose time has come. Your life is a divine idea in the mind of God whose time has come. The time has come because it's now. Now is the time. There is no other time but now. And so whatever it is that you are moving toward in life, you already have it. It's already there. This whole idea of an infinite universe means that there is no spot where God is not. But what that means is that you don't get any half-done things. Like you don't get a little carrot dangled in front of you that will never come true. That has an emptiness, that has an idea that doesn't have the fullness of the experience to it, which means that there would be a hole in the fabric and structure of time and space itself. Not to mention all of life, all that spirit is. Everything that you can think of has to already exist at some point. You've already got it. Who's going to open the door? The part of you that says, I don't know what I'm doing. My knees are shaking. I'm trembling. I'm scared to death. But I know that there's something that will carry me through. Or the part that says, I'm afraid and I'm just going to stay small and I'm not going to try and I'm not going to do this and I'm going to blame my parents or I'm going to blame the economy or the government or whoever's handy and use that as an excuse to stay small. Or are we going to get that the only thing that we get out of life is what we bring? that what we find on the other side of the door is the person that opened up the door? Are we going to get that there is that within us, which is greater than anything that we can imagine? That the light and the love and the presence of Spirit itself inside of each one of us is so magnificent. It's so glorious. It's so great that if we just take a little step forward, what we need appears. I've been getting this vision of, I shared it with somebody yesterday, and they said, yeah, that was an Indiana Jones movie, where he's on the, I'm into movies. I'm going to have my grandchildren all next week. I know I'm going to be watching a zillion movies. He was on the edge of a cliff, and he had to step out into nothing. And as he stepped out, this I think it was a crystal pillar came and supported him. And so as we step out, and a lot of this is just my heart to yours, that as you step out, that which you need will come up and support you and carry you wherever you want to go, because there is greatness in you. There is greatness in you. And there is greatness in every one of us. The big question that we have to ask ourselves is, when we open our eyes in the morning, who's opening them? The one that's going to have a happy day, or the one that says life sucks? When we go to work, who goes? When we talk to someone, who talks? When we move into our lives, who is it that we are? Are we being all that we can be? Or are we pulling back and saying, no, it's just too much. I think I'll just curl up and die. Because really those are our only two choices. To embrace the changes in our lives with our magnificence, or to hold on until we suffocate. Babies, 10 years in the making. May they always have their voices heard at this center. Yes. I love you very much, and so it is.